Hello there, Privyet, and welcome to the Russian Grand Prix Race Notebook. And these lovely little representations of St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square and the Babushka doll over there in the entrance to the Paddock Club reminds me that I need to buy a set of them for my daughters at the airport, Sochi Airport. We're all on our way to the airport because we've got a chartered plane back into Luton. Many people think it's the worst flight of the year because it takes 5 hours and we're all knackered. We've been up since 7. But anyway, we've got plenty to congratulate and commiserate people around the place because it's been a great day for Valtteri Bottas. We'll get on that a little bit later. Nice to see the old clocks there. Have a little blanket to keep them safe once we get to Barcelona. Let's do Sauber first, as is our wont. And here we go. It's a very strange day for them because king of the one-stops, Sauber, with their strategist Ruth Buscombe, today did 2 stops. In fact, they're more or less the only cars that did do 2 stops. That's because Ruth took advantage of the early safety car and clearing the obligation to have to use 2 sets of tyres or 2 different sets of tyres and do the race effectively as a one-stop on 2 sets of the fastest ultra-soft tyres. But it didn't work. It certainly didn't work for Marcus Ericsson, who declared the car terrible and more or less undrivable in the first stint. He said it was awful first stint. He struggled terribly with the tyres, both understeer and oversteer in parts. So he's urged the team to have a look at exactly why that was. There was a solid second stint for Marcus Ericsson, but still, it was only good enough for 15th in the end for the Swede. The only kind of consolation for Ericsson being that he finished ahead of Pascal Wehrlein, which is good for Ericsson because Wehrlein showed him the way at the last race. 2 stops for both of them. They started with the super soft, then went to the ultra soft, and then went to the ultra soft again. So a bit of work, but anyway, the big news about Sauber is they're not going to have to pay quite so much for their engines anymore, and they're starting this new technological link-up using Honda engines next year. So that's the really interesting thing about the deal that we know has been coming for a while. Honda have been talking about wanting to get another team on board. McLaren had blocked it in previous years, but they haven't now since Ron's gone, and actually they can get on with getting some more data and using another team. Now that tells its own story, doesn't it, Lee? Car number 30, Jolyon Palmer, boff. A DNF because of the tangle with Romain Grosjean on lap 1. Not sure if it's Palmer's fault or not. They've gone to the stewards about it at the moment. They're there in the moment. Check the Sky Sports F1 website for news when they come out of it. He couldn't give Grosjean any more space, and then Grosjean didn't give him more space, and it just all ended very badly and rather unnecessarily to complete a horrible weekend for Jolyon Palmer and pretty much a horrible weekend for Romain Grosjean as well. But Nico Hülkenberg should be proud of himself, and Renault should be thankful to him because he's scored yet more points for the team. He had a poor start, but he stayed out, made the strategy work for him, or they made the right calls on the strategy, staying out until lap 40. And then he stopped at the end of the race for P8. They said, great job. At this track, we think that is a fantastic result. Of course, that means the power-sensitive track and the Renault with the Renault engine in the back doesn't exactly have the best engine still at the moment. But well done, Nico Hülkenberg, and the people on the Enstone or the Renault pit wall because they called that spot on, and 8th place was the result. He was only 1.1 seconds behind Ocon, who was in 7th. So I think that's it could have been a little bit more for Hülkenberg had he had a better start, perhaps. Right, Romain Grosjean, his car's somewhere in there. As I said, DNF because of the crash with Palmer at the beginning. It's gone to the stewards. And then Kevin Magnussen, really kind of did he let the penalty get his head down question over K-Mag, I'm afraid to say, because he was running well in the points before that. And then he got the 5-second penalty. You heard him on the radio saying, this can't be right. You know, it wasn't my fault. There was an accident. I just had to go off, and I wasn't thinking about silly arrow boards that I had to go either side of. I just need to get back on track. But no, it's in the race notes. They say that, you know, you have to go past these boards so that you don't gain an advantage by going off there. But they told him to calm down on the radio. They said, yes, we have the race pace. This will be okay. But you know what? They didn't have the race pace. It was a disappointing final result, just 13th. And they know what they have to do going into Barcelona, really, which is to find some pace. I think Magnussen just blamed an overall bad setup for that. Now, spare a thought for Carlos Sainz. Now, do you remember a year ago? I think it was a year ago. Was it a year ago, Lee, when he crashed here and ended up in hospital? I think it was. Or it might have been 2 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was a year ago. How time flies. So bear in mind that Carlos Sainz a year ago was had that massive crash here. But now he's come through up from 14th with a great performance up to P10 and scoring the final point of the race. Toro Rosso's first one, somewhat unbelievably, in Russia. So great job from him. As for Danny Kvyat, he had some engine problems. There's some issue with the power unit he was having to deal with in the middle of the race with the Renault power unit. So I don't quite know what that is, but it meant that Kvyat didn't have the pace of his Spanish teammate and ended up 12th. The car was good, but for those little problems that he had to manage. Now, talking about problems you got to manage, McLaren Honda, and I don't know, should we just not mention them at all and spare their blushes? For Fernando Alonso, well, we won't because we cover every driver, that's the point. Fernando was a DNS, a DN did not start with a failure on the ERS, the hybrid side. Effectively, he couldn't change the battery, but they're still not quite sure exactly why that was, or if they are sure, they're not telling us. Stoffel Vandoorne, 14th. And at least finished the race. That's his second finish of the year after he finished, of course, in Australia, I think more or less in that position. But he also got a 5-second penalty for not going through the bollards on lap 1 and the pit stop. And there wasn't really much to do, said Stoff, after the race. The car was okay, but we were just too far away from absolutely everybody. So now McLaren go into Barcelona, and Honda are going to bring some bits for the engine in Barcelona. So, well, brighter times can only be ahead. Felipe Massa must be absolutely gutted today because that was an easy 6th, I think it was, robbed for him from the slow puncture that he suffered, and he had to box and end up 9th. And he deserved more than that, they said on the radio, and indeed he did. But Lance Stroll, we trailed this a little bit earlier. Oh, don't the grubby marks turn up on this bodywork? Oh, I almost want. Am I allowed to clean that off, Lee, with my finger? No, I'm not. Sorry, it's my compulsion to clean that off. So Stroll, that was his first finish today, and that was good for P11. But amusingly, so he had a spin on lap 1. It was pushed into the curb, and he spun. He apologised for that afterwards. So sorry about the spin, but they said he drove well after that to finish 11th. Now the amusing thing is that he didn't know what to do after the race. Sure, he's done a lot of races in F3, and presumably it's exactly the same. So he said, "What do I do now?" And they said, "Well, Lance, he said, "Do I come into the pits, into our pit stop, into our box?" They said, "No. You follow everybody else into Parc Fermé, shut the car down, get out, and then get weighed." So just thought it was quite a sweet story for Lance there. So anyway, listen, it's the first of some good things, hopefully, for Lance Stroll. Maybe he'll get a point or two shortly. But a great day again for Esteban Ocon and for Sergio Perez here at the Pink Panthers. So well done, Force India. Brilliant result, double points finish. Yes, they lucked into a place after Massa had to pit for the second time after that slow puncture, but they're firming up P4 in the Constructors. Perez 6th, Ocon with his best finish in Formula 1 7th. And well done, they said on the radio, to Checo, P6 after a very good start, good pit stop, and then great for the team. Pit stop, Sergio's pit stop, I can tell you, almost took out the Williams mechanic's feet. So he came out, launched from this box, and I was watching just over here, and Sergio kind of carried on, sorry about the silly waddle, and didn't really turn left any, and came more or less across here. In fact, he did. The chaps who were holding the Williams wheel, the wheel guns, had to sort of step back out of the way as Sergio came round. I wonder if this gent was holding the wheel gun. You weren't holding the wheel gun at the pit stop, were you, where Checo almost ran over your guy's feet? You weren't? No, okay, all right, good. Need to steel cap. It's a dangerous place, this pit lane. Anyway, I think the mechanics thought that was slightly naughty of Sergio Perez, but anyway, they all got away with it unscathed. Yeah, well done to Esteban Ocon, because he makes it into the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship with that 7th place. Now, Red Bull, Ricciardo, DNF with Brett. Oh, it's not Red Bull. What am I talking about? Ferrari. Okay, so was starting on pole a curse instead of a blessing for Ferrari today? That's certainly what Sebastian Vettel seems to suggest. Sebastian Vettel second, by the way, Kimi Raikkonen third, seemed to suggest in the press conference, because he said it was a drag race. The start was just a drag race down to the front, and Mercedes really had it. The wind, Vettel seemed to blame the wind as well. He said the wind was against us too. It didn't help me because it was pushing against me by 10 or 15 kph and slowing me down, whereas Bottas was in my slipstream, he was in my draft, and that helped him, whereas it didn't help me in the Ferrari. Vettel also said something intriguing about whether they're going to carry on in their current way. He said, well, maybe we might have Red Bull joining us at the top of the grids with Mercedes, because he says, I'm hearing some interesting rumors about improvements that Red Bull and Adrian Newey are bringing to the car in Spain. And Vettel, we know, does pop into Red Bull now and again and have a little chats with everybody, so he likes to keep himself informed on that part. Anything else to tell you on that? Yep, really. So they could have stopped earlier with Sebastian Vettel, but they wanted to rely on their benefit, which was getting the tyre length and the stint lengths. So in the end, they pitted on lap 34. They went long. It was the correct strategy. I've double-checked this with strategists up and down the pit lane, not least with James Vowles at Mercedes, and he says he thought Ferrari did the right thing for them because he was so fast at the end. But anyway, it didn't work out. Sebastian Vettel slightly blaming Felipe Massa, but not really. He said he lost time behind Massa. But congratulations to Valtteri Bottas, said Vettel. It's his day. Kimi Raikkonen, a solid podium for him. Good pace reacting to Lewis Hamilton rather than attacking Sebastian Vettel. But some questions being asked about whether Kimi stays next year. And actually, if he keeps up this sort of podium point scoring positions, actually I think he might find he will keep his position next year, because we're not sure, we don't think Ricciardo is going to be available next year. And only other option might be someone like Romain Grosjean. But we've seen Romain Grosjean seems to be struggling and not particularly attractive as a driver at the moment. Certainly perhaps not as a Ferrari replacement, a Kimi replacement of Ferrari. So I think I wouldn't be at all surprised if Kimi actually keeps his drive next year. But we will see. Plenty of other people think he's not going to. Red Bull, we can do that. Ricciardo DNF with brakes. And at the moment, unfortunately, I hate to say chronic brake problem, but I'll say it, chronic brake problem. They think it's the same problem that they suffered with Max Verstappen in Bahrain, i.e. A duct breaking, leading to the brakes overheating, the brake fluid overheating, and then a loss of brake fluid pressure. That was what seems to have done for Daniel Ricciardo. But as for Max Verstappen, that was really the maximum for P5. The pace at the end was very good. It was a good start. Max significantly said the car's handling much better now, and thanked the team because there's a great job, he says, they're doing in that it's not as unpredictable. The car's not as unpredictable as it was before. But well done to all the mechanics here who were on... well, I was just saying, well done to you all for rebuilding the car twice with two pumps and an engine change before the race.
Easy peasy.
No, it wasn't. That's why you're the best mechanics in the world. Well, I can't argue with that today. I really can't. And finally, we get to Valtteri Bottas, and so chuffed, I think everybody in the pit lane is to see him at P1. As we said, it was the start. Maybe starting P3, as we said, on the clean side of the grid was a blessing because he could draft Sebastian Vettel and take the lead there. Great start off the clean side, slipstream into 2, and significantly it was the safety car restart I think was critical. Bottas kept his head, and see what you can see here, Lee. Kept his head and got a very crisp and clean safety car restart. Didn't give Sebastian Vettel any chance at all to attack him off the safety car restart. Withheld the pressure from Vettel brilliantly to finish just 0.6 of a seconds in front of the German, and fantastic. Delighted with him, and to Antti Vierula, who is his physio, who gave me such a workover when I went and visited him in Finland, and he's been with Valtteri ever since his Williams time, so really happy for him. It was Lewis Hamilton got swamped at the start, boxed in side by side, we saw that, and then suffered from overheating problems, so he's fighting a losing battle really all race long, trying to keep the temperatures of the car under control. And Lewis said on the radio he thought he might have stayed out too long on the strategy, but they said we will discuss it later. And Lewis, intriguingly in that interview with Rachel, saying that I know where the deficit was. And I'm wondering whether that was on setup, whether he's gone a wrong way on setup for some reason, and maybe perhaps a different way to Bottas, and he'll address that for the next race. I wonder what exactly that was. That was fairly intriguing, wasn't it? So as Tony Ross now has won with another driver after winning the championship with Nico Rosberg last year. Congratulations to him. He's now won with another driver after looking after Rosberg for so long. And just the last thing on this, it was it seems that it was a sort of Mexican standoff on the strategy. We had thought, you know, maybe Bottas, all that he needs to do is to wait for Vettel to pit and then pit after him to cover him off. Actually, what they were all doing was waiting for all of them to pit, and then eventually it just got to the point where Bottas, James Vowles on the pit wall here, felt that Bottas was just losing a little bit more time, too much time. He anticipated it, and he initiated the stops, and then everyone else did. He could have stopped Lewis Hamilton earlier, but that would have brought him into the clutches of Kimi Raikkonen. So that's why they didn't do that, and that would have just meant that there would be a knock-on effect, and everybody would have had to stop there. So they didn't want to pull the trigger on their own pit stop, if you like. Right, we're getting plenty of people in here. I'll just leave you with these images and the thought that Mercedes employed Valtteri Bottas to really win when Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to, and vice versa. When Hamilton, perhaps Bottas is having an off weekend, then Hamilton wins. But anyway, Bottas has certainly done that. Lewis does seem to be having an off weekend for whatever reason, car setup or anything else. But when Lewis did have an off weekend, as he has this weekend, Valtteri Bottas has delivered for the team. So congratulations to him. That's it from The Notebook, this part of the show. We'll see you in Barcelona in a couple of weeks' time. Bye-bye.
Great.